everyone, a very warm welcome to this new episode of Coffee Table. And obviously, we have today for you a brand new guest. And nowadays, after Abdul Sattar, Edhi, philanthropy is being talked about. And people are talking about the model he had been pursuing in his life and how, from a scratch, one person, it was a one man show, one person brought in that bonanza that is now explained in different way, and nobody can explain how he did that, what was the model, where the capital came from, and how that capital sustained the flow of revenues and other things. These are questions that economists have been answering and getting the Nobel Prize over time. Okay, how to bring capital to where it needs and other economic complex issues. And that was a miracle that without explaining anything, he just made it happen without following any theory. So we have today with us Mr. Shoaib Sultan, who is the chair of the board of RS Rural Support Programs, and he spent his whole life in the area running in non-government organizations and doing philanthropy, doing public service work, which was not exactly philanthropy, doing philanthropy again, and so many other things. So much that the neighboring big brother invited him to get some sort of what they call it as mashwara, just to consult on different things while they were making a model. So we have invited today Mr. Shoaib Sultan, very warm welcome. Just want to start by giving you an opportunity to set the basic premise. What was that phenomenon?
Well, Tahir, first I must clarify, there's nothing in common between what Edhi was doing and what, for example, I'm involved in.
All right.
Edhi is unique. I don't think you can get an example of Edhi anywhere, who just created something out of nothing. No, I, of course, I was brought up in a civil servant's household.
Right.
So obviously civil service became my ambition.
Right.
And I succeeded in doing that. In 1955 I joined the civil service of Pakistan. And in those days the CSP officers had to serve a tenure in what used to be East Pakistan. So my first posting was in what is now Bangladesh, in East Pakistan, and as a young assistant commissioner, I was in a subdivision in a district called Comilla.
In Sylhet?
No, not Sylhet. Comilla was a district
That's a
and
district.
Sylhet was a district. And at that very time, government of Pakistan had been persuaded by USAID and Ford Foundation to set up two academies. These academies were called Pakistan Academy for Rural Development. One was at Comilla and the other was at Peshawar. And I was told that the director of the Pakistan Academy for Comilla was an ex-ICS officer.
I don't.
ICS, as you know, was the
Yeah,
steel
it's-
framework of the British Empire.
Yeah.
They were supposed to be heaven born.
And your parent framework?
Well, he was in the provincial service, my grandfather. But he got listed post holders, which were the ICS posts. And he resigned from the ICS, which was very rare in those days. So I was quite keen to meet him. And one day I saw that there were 5 brand new PhDs from American universities who came to my court in Brahmanbadia, where I was assistant commissioner and magistrate. And they introduced themselves as members of the Pakistan Academy Rural Faculty, and said that, well, our director has sent us here and he simply wants that we should just observe you for a fortnight, how you function. Because the whole purpose of this academy was how to really make government pro-poor.
Right. Pro people.
Yes, pro-people. So they came, we spent about a fortnight, and I enjoyed them. They were I was young, they were all very young, highly educated, very perceptive. And one day, the place where I was, there were three means of communication and perambulation, as Dr. Johnson would say. Either you went by bicycle, or you went on foot, or you went by train. Or if you were lucky and then you had a launch, then you could go by. So I was taking the train. There was a train, Green Arrow, which used to ply between Chittagong and Dhaka, and it used to pass through my subdivision. So the stations which were in my subdivision, I would go by the train, Green Arrow. And I got into the train, and there I saw in the compartment a very impressive man sitting there, all clad in khadar. So I introduced myself. I just saluted him, and he said, "Well, who are you?" I was a bit said, "Look, I was the chief executive officer of this, and here is this man so condescending towards me." And I said, "Well, I'm the assistant commissioner, the SDO as they used to be." "Oh," he said, "yes, you are Shoaib Sultan Khan." Because my faculty came here, and I must say that they put you under a microscope, and you came out with flying colors. So I was very pleased and flattered. That was my first meeting with this visionary, Dr. Hamid Khan. And all that I am doing now or later in my life, after I had met him, I got and learned from him.
Right.
Now his theory was, because he was himself a assistant commissioner in Bengal when the famine happened. And when I asked him, "Why did you resign from the ICS?" He said, "Look, I had no complaint against the British. They were very good administrators. They had an excellent law and order system, excellent revenue collection system, excellent macro development, railways, this, that, and the other, Indus basin system here in West Pakistan." But he said, "I didn't find anything to really tackle the rural poor, to help them. And I didn't find anything except that they had relief. Whenever something happened, a famine occurred or something, they would bring relief." So he said, I decided to find what should be the strategy and approach to help the rural poor to come out of poverty.
Right.
Now the approach that he adopted was also something very unusual. He said that he spent all his time, first he tried to become a poor. He became a apprentice with a locksmith in Aligarh, tried to. And he said that after 2 years, although I became a good lockmaker, but I was not doing anything for the poor. Then he went to Jama Millia in Delhi, where Dr. Zakir Hussain, who became the President of India. But he said there they also, you see, it was just theory and nothing. So he went back to, and when he accepted this position, and that position also he accepted because his colleagues had become chief secretaries and all that, and one of the chief secretaries, his batchmate, he called him and he said, "Akhtar, you are a fool, but you are a good fool. Now you are in search of this, that how to help the poor. Here is an academy. Why don't you go and then try and do it?"
Yeah.
So he said that, and he spent a year in Michigan because the Americans insisted that the faculty and the director must spend a year with us so that they should learn what is new. Because we look at the history of poverty reduction programs in India, the only thing that was introduced in India was what was called as Rural Reconstruction Program in the 20s. And this was done by an ICS officer called Mr. F.L. Brain in Gurgaon. And Mr. Brain came up with a very simple theory that the rural people are sitting, doing nothing.
Not using potential.
And why can't we mobilize them to do something? Free. This is the concept of self-help, which is still being accepted here, even in 21st century. Now, as Dr. Hamid Khan put it, that this approach cost nothing and it achieved nothing. So
Achieved nothing.
Yes, of course, nothing. I mean, this. How can you really? I mean, these poor people, they may be sitting idle, but they are sitting idle, but they have to find a livelihood. You tell them, all right, you work free. How they are going to? How this program is going to sustain? So, this 1 year which he spent in Michigan, he said that I just spent it in the library. And then to his surprise, he said, I found that the solution was already there. If you look at the history of countries which were poor and are not poor, you can very easily find what they did. And one particular country that he used to mention was Germany. There was a person called Raiffeisen who was the mayor of a small principality. This was 1849. Raiffeisen himself was a mayor. I mean, he was well off, but he had a very kind heart for the poor. So he would collect these small peasants, landless, labor, and he would say that, look, you are being crushed by three giants. And who were those three giants in 1849? The landlord, the moneylender, and the shopkeeper. And he came up with this package, these principles for subsistence holder development. What were these principles? He told them individually, you can't achieve anything. But you have the potential. It's not that you don't have the potential to do something, because that is inborn. You know, like Michelangelo, when people used to praise his David, he would say, I have done nothing. David was in the marble. I simply removed the superfluous material.
Egg-million approach.
Yes, and that is what Raiffeisen said to these people. There is this, but individually you can't unleash it because you have a lot of handicaps. Get organized, you will become a power, you will be able to help each other, you will be able to find what it is. Organization with the leadership. He said that is what you will have to do. Money gets money. And thirdly, he said, of course, because you have this potential, you need to unleash it.
Skill development and everything.
I mean, whatever. It's not vocational or technical skills. He was talking of human skills,
Right.
management skills, cooperative skills, productive skills, the ones which are there, which are inborn. So you see, these three principles, Dr. Hamid Khan said that is what he was trying in Kumila. And he said, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. He would proudly say that I'm not the original thinker. In fact, when he came and saw me, and as a young CSP officer with 1 million people whose welfare I had to look after in Brahmanbadia, I thought I can move mountains. And he said that, look, young man, don't try to be a reformer. Only prophets are reformers. Don't try to reinvent, because inventions are very rare. And revolutionary you can't be, you have joined the civil service. So I said, then what should I do? He said, be a copycat.
Be a copycat.
So I said,
which is still true.
What should I copy? He said, this is what you should copy, what Raiffeisen did.
Right.
So you see, what the shape it took, because you know, what is there in the state? There are two pillars of the state which you see. One is the administrative pillar, right from the president down to Patwari, the lowest functionary. And you have the political pillar, which is the National Assembly or Parliament, right down to the Union Council or Village Council, as in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa they have done. Now the basic issue here is what Raiffeisen was trying to articulate, that poverty or subsistence is at the household level.
Yeah, obviously.
Unless you can go to the household level and help the family to rise above the level of subsistence, you may do anything.
No, it would not be inclusive.
Administrative pillar is important for services and supplies. Political pillar is necessary for democracy. And you need a social pillar for pulling out and pulling up the poor from poverty above it.
So that was the model.
I am doing only social pillar. I am not a philanthropist.
All right.
I am not a charity.
So, right.
And to do that, who has the resources? It needs massive resources. It's not going to be a... You see, when I go to the village and I say that, look, what I'm saying is, this is totally different approach. I'm saying fulfill your obligations first before we can do anything. Before the rural support programs can do anything, you have to fulfill these conditions. Because what we are trying to do is develop enter into a development partnership. Now in a partnership there are obligations on both sides. Their obligations are they should organize. Their obligations are they should identify a genuine and honest leader.
Right.
Their obligation is to start having savings in their regular meetings. Their obligation is to enter into a partnership with us for identifying their potential and the obstacles.
Right. So here we take a break, and after the break we'll continue discussion, so please stay with us.
It's diverse.
It's original.
It's SDTV.
Welcome back. So how this program that Abdul Sattar Edhi carried, it's different or unique, or how he does it?
I mean, what I have explained, there is nothing in common with Sattar Edhi
Yeah.
in this.
So, but even on the hindsight, would you like to throw some light on that?
No, I told you the Sattar Edhi was totally a unique phenomenon. I mean, when I started work, as I was just coming to, I needed support. And I could not do it on my own. Dr. Hamid Khan also could not do it on his own. There are about 18 million rural households. And when we did a poverty scorecard, RSPs did the poverty scorecard, the maximum for the ISP, the Nazir Income Support Program. almost 48% were below the poverty line who were entitled to get support. And we found that there were another 20% on top of that who also needed, otherwise they were vulnerable poor. So we were talking of 70% of the 18 million to be organized for this. Now, without support of government, this was not possible. The UN offered me a sort of a consultancy in Japan, in the UN Center for Regional Development in Nagoya. And then from there UNICEF came and they said, well, we have a program in Sri Lanka, so why don't you become our social development consultant? But it was in Sri Lanka that I was approached by Aga Khan Foundation. I thought I'll never go back to Pakistan. But they came and they said that, why don't you come and initiate the Aga Khan Rural Support Program, which had only two objectives. There were 1 million people in Gilgit-Baltistan and Chitral. Their income should be doubled in 10 years. And in this process, if you can also develop a replicable model. So here was a backing. As you know, Aga Khan himself is the head of a state. So here he was. He assured me that he will give me. He said he will give you $700,000 every year. I thought it was a lot of money. Little realizing that was peanuts when I looked at the challenge. But the very first year, this thing where we got the people organized and the response that people were getting, and the donors who came, because Aga Khan Foundation Geneva saw to it that donors were brought here. We got 11 donors. And after second year, I didn't need even money from Aga Khan Foundation. And for 12 years then I sat in Gilgit. And Aga Khan Foundation invited World Bank to evaluate the program every 5 years. The first evaluation they did after 5 years, this team from Operations Evaluation Division of the World Bank, it made two comments. One was that the first 4 years of AKRSP are the missed 4 years of all World Bank rural development programs.
Okay.
Because AKRSP adopted a process approach and we go with a blueprint approach. They didn't consult people, we were consulting people. And after 5 years, 10 years when they came, they concluded that yes, in real terms, the incomes of the people have more than doubled. That is what then attracted the SARC Commission for Poverty Alleviation. And in 1992, I also got the Magsaysay Award from the President of Philippines, which was advertised all over the world. Mr. Nawaz Sharif was the Prime Minister at that time. He also came to know of it. I was sent for from Gilgit and was told that why can't we do it? It's a countrywide program. And the countrywide program was approved for 10 billion rupees at that time. And we were very happy. The National Rural Support Program was set up. The only condition that I put before the Prime Minister when he said that, well, you come and join the government and we'll create a ministry or a department and whatever you want. And I said, Prime Minister, I have been out of government. That's how I've done it. This is not something which can be done by remaining within the government rules and regulations. So he said, what should be done? I said, create a similar organization as AKRSP, which is a not-for-profit joint stock company. And you can nominate the directors, but I knew that he wouldn't. I will give him a list and he will agree. And Sattar Aziz at that time was the finance minister who had just come from IFAD. So he was very pro. So that's how it was approved. But as luck would have it, we got the first installment of 500 million and set up National Rural Support Program. Before the second installment, his government was dismissed. And the new Prime Minister wanted us to return the money, so it went through that process. But why I am telling you this? Because this approach needs full government support or donor support. And Akhtar Hamid Khan always used to tell me that, look, if you've decided to live in the river, don't pick up quarrel with the crocodile. So many a time NGOs come to me, because we are not an NGO in that sense, and they say that, well, look, you have now we have 6 million rural households organized in Pakistan, and why don't you take up these rights agenda? I said, we don't have to take up the rights agenda. We have created the social pillar. You can go to the social pillar, and if you can convince them, they'll take it up. But if you are asking us to take it up, then we will be in the same category as you are. And how are we going to get the resources? So you see, this is what it is. And actually when the commission, they saw it, because this was the only first example in South Asia that government had given resources for creating an independent autonomous support organization and not controlling it. So they made that as their overarching recommendation, that governments of South Asia should support and provide resources to establish independent and autonomous support organizations like National Rural Support Program in Pakistan. Of course, governments, they approved it in 1993. All the SARC heads of the state, I don't know whether they understood what they were approving, but they did nothing. And that's what UNDP New York approached me. Why don't you take the lessons to South Asia? And lo and behold, the only country which accepted this approach was India.
Was India.
And in Andhra Pradesh, in 10 years here, I had reached 1 million people. In 10 years, 12 years in Andhra Pradesh, the program reached 45 million. And the other thing was that in India, I only worked with women. I only used to mobilize women. So 11 million women got mobilized who reached these 45 million people. So when I tried to go to the Pakistani politicians, their reaction was always ad hoc. After NRSP, and prior to NRSP, USAID had come to me in Gilgit. Rocky Staples was the director, and he said, is there any province which will do this? And I said, well, I can try, because all my service after East Pakistan was in NWFP, or Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. And I also knew the Chief Minister. Aftab Sherpa was the Chief Minister at that time. So, and the Chief Secretary, Imtiaz Sahibzada, used to say to me, why don't you come and do something here? So he said, all right, USAID will give you $5 million if you set up a similar organization. So the first organization application was the Sarhad Rural Support Program. So, this is an approach which Akhtar Hamid Khan said can be replicated, it cannot be expanded. I can't sit in Gilgit and then do all this.
Yeah, right.
So this is how it got, whoever invited me.
And we've been doing replicating the model.
1998, of course, Shahbaz Sharif called me and said, why don't you do it in Punjab? But in Pakistan, the support was temporary, and then we had to fight for our existence. That's why, we could have easily reached the mark, that 14 million that we wanted to. Of all the politicians that I interacted, current politicians, including I went to the Prime Minister also, that there is a unfinished agenda. But at that time, Sattar Aziz was
Sattar has actually worked with the UN agencies
Yes.
and could understand the development work and all.
This time he called somebody who said that Benazir Income Support Program is the best program for poverty reduction. Now they don't realize that
It's
for
not poverty reduction.
7 years you have been spending this money, and you know what we can do with this money. I mean, this approach which I am telling you, I mean, we don't need that much money. In fact, it might come as a surprise, and of course there's a lot of talk today about Qayyum Ali Shah. In 2009, I was invited, because in 2003, Sindh also created a Sindh Rural Support Organization, asked me to be the chairman of that. So in 2009, he invited me and he said that, and after listening to me, he said, कि आपके पास तो गुर्बत का नुस्खा नजर आता है. So I said, well, नुस्खा तो मेरे पास है, लेकिन वसाइल आपके पास हैं. So he said, all right, I'll give you 4 billion rupees for next 3 years. And there are these 2 districts, Kashmir and Shikarpur, because these are the most backward districts यहाँ आप करें. And I told him that I'll only work with women. And he laughed and he said that, well, if you go to our villages, women will just turn away. They won't even talk to you. I said, they won't. And anyway, in 2 years, we were able to mobilize more than 225,000 women. And that program was so successful that in 2015, a European Union group went on field visit to Sindh. They went there also. Their councillor was Brent de Groot. When he came back, he gave me a call and he said that, well, I want to meet you. So I met him. And he said, what I have seen in terms of empowerment of women, I have not seen anywhere in Pakistan. So would the Sindh government agree if European Union offers to do this in 8 more districts of Sindh? I said, why not? They will. He said, well, we don't know anybody there. And secondly, we are not a substitute for government. They should also agree then to take the remaining districts. So I took him to Qayyum Ali Shah. And Qayyum Ali Shah said, why not? So we are now doing this through European Union assistance of 82 million euros in another 8 districts. And Qayyum Ali Shah also. Huh?
Interior Sindh.
Yes, interior Sindh. And Qayyum Ali Shah also approved 6 more districts. So out of 24, you hopefully, I hope that new Chief Minister will honor that.
You might add few more districts. So here we take another break, and after the break we'll just narrow down our focus in light of whatever has been said to Abdul, Sattar, Edhi, and so please stay with us.
It's diverse.
It's original.
It's SDTV.
Welcome back. In the light of, you're a very seasoned person. You have worked with, globally, if I may say it, and in other sectors as well, seen civil servants. What do you think? How would you sum up Abdul Sattar Edhi? Say something about it.
Well, how should I sum him up? Because he is, as I said, such a unique phenomenon. Actually, the best description that I found was in an article which Rahman wrote in the paper.
Tahir Rahman.
And he said that he was not a social worker, he was not a philanthropist, he was a social reformer. That's what he was. And basically, he gave a new dimension to charity. And the main thing is that he had no support, institutional support. The nearest that you can compare Abdul Sattar Edhi is Mother Teresa. But Mother Teresa also had the church behind her.
Yeah.
Who was there behind Edhi? Nothing. I mean, to compare him to anyone is really
Wrong.
absolutely wrong. It's not fair. I mean, why I am not saying anything because I'm not in that league. Nobody is in that league. He's all by himself. Tell me, how many Edhis can you identify in this world? I can't. Somebody who just starts a small shop in Karadar, and from that small shop, it was his honesty. You know, Dr. Hamid Khan used to say that Pakistan's problem is not economic but moral. And Edhi is the best example of that.
Moral reformation.
Absolutely. Even social reform.
I just read a sentence which actually appealed to me a lot, and I don't know if it's right or wrong. And the writer wrote, anyone can do it, but for that you have to run down your own ego, run over your own ego.
Not
So
even
he has done it in a way. He could beg, and I mean,
no.
I don't know how representative this sentence is. All sort of.
No, I mean, I told you that basically he never changed his way of living, and he never adopted these modern techniques, modern accounting and this, that and other, and yet he dealt with millions and people trusted him. And what he didn't do, I mean, he had helicopters, he had ambulances, he had everything. It was simply his demonstration that how honest he was, how dedicated he was. I mean, who can do what he was doing, standing at the corners of the road collecting money?
Yeah.
No, he was totally, you can't compare him with anyone.
Yeah, right.
You can't really describe him. He's beyond words. Let me tell you that.
So at the end of this program, I mean, if I try to sum it up, the one sentence that we read in our first few classes, and it's still there, story of a milkman and all that spilled milk and everything, that honesty is the best policy. And that is he adopted, and with this we say goodbye. Next time, next topic, next guest.
There's one
So
thing
please
I
keep
will
watching
add.
our program. Shoaib sir, want to say something?
One thing
Please.
I would say that if we want to reduce poverty, eliminate poverty in Pakistan, then we have to foster this social pillar.
Right.
Without it, it will not happen.
Yeah. Right. So he added that we need to foster that social pillar, and as they say, in the end, everything is social. With this, we take permission. Next time, next guest, next topic. So please keep watching our programs.